Have you ever experienced that moment, that split second when everything changes, your heart starts racing, your breath catches in your throat? Johnny Carson was living that moment right now. But it wasn't just him. The 300 people in the studio and 23 million Americans watching at home were about to experience the same shock. March 18th, 1983, Friday night. The Tonight Show was flowing like clockwork. Johnny had just finished his monologue. The audience was roaring with laughter. Ed McMahon was in his usual spot. Doc Severinsen and the band were ready. Just another Friday night, or so they thought. Johnny sat down at his desk, looked at the camera, and was about to introduce the first guest when something happened that had never happened before in 21 years of The Tonight Show. The red phone on his desk started ringing, not the prop phone they used for comedy bits. The actual real emergency line that was supposed to be disconnected during live broadcasts. The studio fell silent instantly. You could hear a pin drop. Johnny stared at the phone like it was a ticking bomb. Ed McMahon's smile froze on his face. Fred de Cordova, the show's director, was frantically gesturing from behind the cameras, equally confused. The phone kept ringing, that shrill, insistent sound cutting through the silence like a knife through butter. Ring, ring, ring. Johnny looked at the audience. Folks, I don't know what's happening here. This phone isn't supposed to ring during the show. In fact, it's not even supposed to be connected. He forced a laugh, trying to keep things light, but you could hear the confusion in his voice. The audience laughed nervously, thinking this might be an elaborate setup for a comedy bit. But those who knew Johnny well, the crew members who'd worked with him for years, they saw something different in his eyes. Genuine confusion, real uncertainty. The phone continued its relentless ringing. 5th ring, 6th ring, 7th ring. Well, Johnny said, reaching for the phone with a slight tremor in his hand, I guess we're about to find out who's desperate enough to call The Tonight Show during a live broadcast. He picked up the receiver and held it to his ear. Hello, this is The Tonight Show. For a moment there was silence. Johnny's face went through a series of rapid changes. Confusion turned to recognition. Recognition turned to shock. And shock turned into something nobody in that studio had ever seen before on Johnny Carson's face during a live show. Pure, unfiltered emotion. Dad! Johnny's voice cracked. The single word hung in the air like a thunderclap. The audience gasped collectively. Ed McMahon sat up straight, his trademark smile completely gone. The cameras stayed locked on Johnny's face as it transformed before America's eyes. Dad, is that really you? Johnny repeated, his voice barely above a whisper now, but the microphone picked up every word, every breath, every emotion through the phone speaker. Audible to everyone in the studio and everyone watching at home, came a voice, weak, elderly, struggling, but unmistakable. Johnny, son, I had to tell you something before. The voice faded. Johnny leaned forward, gripping the phone tighter. Before what, Dad? What's wrong? Where are you? What nobody in that audience knew, what America didn't know, was that Johnny Carson's father, Homer Lloyd Kit Carson, was dying. He'd been diagnosed with terminal lung cancer 3 months earlier and had maybe days, possibly hours left. And Kit Carson, a man who'd always been distant, who'd rarely shown affection, who'd spent Johnny's childhood working long hours and saying even fewer words, was using his final moments to call his son on live television. But why? Why would a dying man make such a public, desperate call? What could be so important that it couldn't wait until after the show? What secret, what confession, what final message did Kit Carson need to deliver that would shock not just his son, but an entire nation? I'm at St. Mary's Hospital in Norfolk, Nebraska. Kit's voice came through the speaker, labored and weak. Johnny, they told me I don't have much time. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, but I couldn't go without telling you. Johnny's hand was shaking visibly now. Tears were forming in his eyes. The studio remained in absolute silence, 300 people holding their breath simultaneously. Dad, what is it? What do you need to tell me? Johnny's voice was steady now, but his eyes betrayed everything. The cameras captured every micro-expression, every moment of vulnerability from a man who'd built his career on never losing control. Through the speaker, Kit Carson took a labored breath. I need to tell you, I need America to hear this too. Because I was wrong, son. I was so damn wrong. The audience leaned forward collectively. 23 million people across America stopped whatever they were doing. In homes, bars, and hospital rooms, everyone was frozen, listening to a dying man's confession. When you told me you wanted to be an entertainer, Kit continued, his voice breaking, when you said you wanted to make people laugh instead of taking over the business, I told you that you were throwing your life away. Do you remember? Johnny nodded, though his father couldn't see him. I remember, Dad. I called you a fool. I said entertainers were just clowns, that real men did real work. I didn't talk to you for 2 years after you went to Los Angeles. 2 years, Johnny. 2 years I wasted because I was too proud, too stubborn to admit I was wrong. A tear rolled down Johnny's cheek. The camera caught it. America saw it. But I was watching, son. Every single night, even when I told your mother I wasn't, I'd sneak down to the basement and watch your show. And I'd see those people laughing, see them forgetting their problems for a while. I'd see soldiers writing letters saying your show got them through Vietnam. I'd see sick kids in hospitals smiling because of you. Kit's breathing became more labored. A nurse's voice could be heard in the background. Mr. Carson, you need to rest. Not yet. Kit's voice suddenly stronger with defiance. Not until I tell my son what I should have told him 30 years ago. Johnny wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Dad, it's okay. You don't have to— Yes, I do, Kit interrupted. Johnny, you didn't throw your life away. You saved it. And you saved thousands of other lives too. You give people hope. You give them joy. That's more important than any business I ever ran, any money I ever made. The studio audience was openly crying now. Ed McMahon had his face in his hands. Even the camera operators were struggling to keep their shots steady. I'm proud of you, son, Kit said, his voice fading again. I'm so damn proud I can barely stand it. And I'm sorry I never said it before. I'm sorry I wasted so much time being angry at you for being brave enough to follow your dreams. Johnny couldn't speak. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He just sat there, holding the phone, tears streaming freely down his face. I love you, Johnny, Kit whispered. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it, but I'm showing it now. Right here, right now, in front of God and everybody watching. I love my son. And America, if you're listening, you take care of him for me, okay? There was a long pause. Then Kit's voice came one final time, barely audible. Keep making people laugh, son. It's the most important work there is. The line went dead. Johnny sat frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear, staring into space. The silence in the studio was deafening. No one moved, no one breathed. Finally, slowly, Johnny lowered the phone back to its cradle. He looked at the camera, at the faces of 23 million Americans watching from their homes. His face was raw with emotion, tears still flowing, but there was something else there, too. Peace, understanding, love. Ladies and gentlemen, Johnny said, his voice thick with emotion. That was my father, and I— His voice broke completely. He couldn't continue. The audience did something then that had never happened before on The Tonight Show. They stood up, all 300 of them, and they began to applaud. Not the excited, energetic applause of entertainment. This was different, slower, deeper. The kind of applause you give at a funeral when honoring someone's life. The kind that says, we see you, we understand, we're here with you. Johnny tried to compose himself, but he couldn't. He stood up from his desk and walked to the edge of the stage, his hand covering his mouth, shoulders shaking with sobs he could no longer contain. Ed McMahon immediately went to him, putting his arm around Johnny's shoulders. It's okay, Johnny, Ed whispered, though his microphone picked it up. It's okay. Fred de Cordova made a quick decision from behind the cameras. He signaled to cut to commercial, but Johnny held up his hand. No, he said, his voice hoarse. No commercials, not now. He walked back to his desk, sat down, and looked directly into the camera. When he spoke, his voice was raw but steady. My father just called me on live television to tell me he's proud of me, something he never said in 40 years, and he did it publicly because maybe he knew other fathers out there need to hear this too. Johnny paused, gathering his thoughts. How many of you watching right now have a son or daughter you're angry with? Someone you haven't spoken to in months, maybe years, because they made a choice you didn't approve of? How many of you are waiting for the right time to tell someone you love them? The studio was silent, but across America, in living rooms and bedrooms, people were sobbing. Fathers were looking at their estranged children's phone numbers. Sons were thinking about their distant dads. My father didn't have much time left, Johnny continued. He knew it. So he stopped waiting for the perfect moment. He just picked up the phone and called. And you know what? There will never be a perfect moment. There's only now. Johnny looked down at the red phone on his desk. This phone wasn't supposed to ring tonight. Technically, it shouldn't have been able to ring at all. The network has rules about unscripted calls during live broadcasts, but my father found a way, because when something's important enough, you find a way. He looked back at the camera. If you're watching this and there's someone you need to call, someone you need to forgive, someone you need to tell you love them, don't wait. Don't wait until you're in a hospital bed with hours left. Don't wait until it's almost too late. Do it now, right now. Johnny picked up the phone again, stared at it for a moment. This will probably be the last conversation I ever have with my father, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful he called. I'm grateful he said what he needed to say. But I'm also heartbroken that it took him 40 years and a terminal diagnosis to say the words I needed to hear my whole life. He set the phone down gently. Don't be like my father. Don't wait. Life's too short. Pride is too expensive. And love is the only thing that matters in the end. The Tonight Show didn't return to its regular schedule that night. Johnny couldn't interview guests. He couldn't do comedy bits. Instead, something unprecedented happened. He opened the phone lines. If anyone out there needs to call someone right now, Johnny said, turn off your TV and do it. We'll be here when you get back. For the next 15 minutes, Johnny sat at his desk and talked. He talked about his childhood in Nebraska, about his complicated relationship with his father, about the years of silence and misunderstanding. He talked about regret and forgiveness. And America listened. The NBC switchboard was overwhelmed within minutes. Over 50,000 calls came in that night, people calling to share their own stories of estranged parents, distant children, broken relationships. The phone company later reported the call volume across the United States spiked by 300% in the hour following Johnny's father's call. When the show finally ended, Johnny didn't go to his dressing room. He immediately called St. Mary's Hospital in Norfolk. His father was still alive, barely conscious, but alive. Johnny spoke to him for 20 minutes. This time, privately. This time, just the two of them. Kit Carson died at 4:47 a.m. the next morning, March 19, 1983. He died knowing his son heard him. He died knowing he'd said what needed to be said, and he died knowing that his final act had touched millions of lives. Johnny took 1 week off from The Tonight Show. When he returned, he never mentioned that phone call again on air. But something had changed in him. People who knew him said he was different, softer, more present, more human. The red phone remained on his desk for the rest of his tenure as host. He never had it disconnected again, and sometimes during commercial breaks, crew members would see him staring at it, lost in thought, a small smile on his face. Years later, after Johnny retired, a reporter asked him about the most important moment of his career. Without hesitation, Johnny answered, "The night my father called." "Not your interviews with presidents?" the reporter asked. "Not your comedy specials? Not any of your Emmy wins?" Johnny shook his head. "None of that matters compared to those 5 minutes with my dad. He gave me something I'd been waiting my whole life to hear, and he gave millions of other people permission to do the same for their families." Today, that phone call is remembered as one of television's most powerful unscripted moments. Not because it was entertaining, but because it was real, raw, human. Johnny Carson made people laugh for 30 years, but on March 18, 1983, he made them feel, he made them think. He made them pick up their phones and call the people they loved. Kit Carson's final gift to his son wasn't an apology. It was a lesson. Don't wait. Don't let pride or fear or time steal what matters most. Say what needs to be said. Love who needs to be loved. Now, not tomorrow, not someday, now. Because sometimes the most important call you'll ever receive comes when you least expect it, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply answer.